Hi everyone, my name is Sander van Geloven. I'm from Stichting Z25.org from the Netherlands, and I'm going to talk about architectural font digitization and design, and just to figure out which button does what. Short introduction about myself. I have a pretty broad background. I've been working in ICT for about 20 years. For the last 10 years, self-employed entrepreneur. Spoke last year with FOSDEM about integrating spell checking and grammar checking. And this year, speaking about a project we did at Stichting Z25 about font design. And some of these other projects, by the way, you can find on my GitHub account. There's loads and loads of stuff. I have a pretty wide interest in many different things, and so I ended up in a font design project, which I ended up in a font design project which I never thought I would end up in. What I'm going to talk about today is a small study we did on a very old font, where we got the money for it, how we went around running the project, and what kind of open source design tools we used in order to create this font. And we're from the city of Utrecht in the Netherlands, and we have an old post office which is about 100 years old, and they decommissioned it about 3 years ago, but it's a public building and it's a monument, state monument, and it has been an inspiration for a long time for me personally and other people who might know it. Who might know it? Okay, for other people. It's a pretty overwhelming atmosphere if you're inside. The initial designs are from the 20s, and well, it's a modern building, but it's full of sort of detailed decorations, amongst which the most important ones are a number of statues in the main hall, and these are 5 of the 6 statues which have letters on them. And over the years I sort of got the idea of, well, it might be nice to digitize these letters and create a font out of it. But I have many of these small ideas, and then, and it's just another hobby project, so why can't we transfer this into a more serious project and get some funding to do it and do it properly? And I don't know, who of you ever designed a font? Okay. So, font design, as many friends of mine noticed when I talked about them in the first stages of this project, like, oh, you just draw over the lines and that's it, and then you're done. But it's a bit more tricky than that. Especially, well, I'll go into that a little later, sorry. I skipped that part on the... Yeah, okay. A little background on the sculpture, by the way, before I go into the design of the font. The guy was the 3rd most influential sculptor in the Netherlands for sculptures which are commissioned by buildings that were built by the state. And you can find some of his work on the internet. And really didn't know much about sculptures for buildings, but back in the 20s and the 30s this was a big thing, and especially in the style he worked in, the Amsterdamse School. There's many buildings in the Netherlands which have not just bricks but also many decorative elements, mainly statues. Then this is a font about 100 years old, and we're walking around in Brussels the other day, so we thought, like, maybe there's some references of current day usage of such a font as you saw on the statues. And there are plenty of examples you still find of this really thick 100-year-old font design. So even though it's old, it's still relevant, usable, if you like something in this style. Then, to go into the characters a bit more. So if you stand in the hall and you look up to these statues, this is what you actually see. And if you try to draw over this in order to make a letter out of this, is quite tricky. You see the distortion, and there are many more aspects which make it not so easy to digitize this font. Such as, the edges are pretty rough, they look smooth here, but if you make a detailed photograph, it's pretty messy. The letters are adjusted for height. As you can see here, the I is sort of pushed together in order to fit the whole word Australia. The proportions are also changed from statue to statue, so this little bar here from the E is in some statues a bit higher and the other one's a bit lower. Some details differ, and for example the K, the indentation on top sometimes has a little bit different shape. It's black on black, so if you want to do edge detection on this, it's an extra challenge. What else? There's a whole list of stuff which doesn't make this easy. The original designs were made on gypsum, and they were even as maybe sometimes less accurate as the final result. So even if you have access to the design, it doesn't make it that much easier. So we went there with my colleague Michiel and took some pictures of this, which was not easy. Especially you have to get to an elevated position to make the photographs. And even then, if you zoom in the photographs, you'll see that at the end of the picture, already you're looking up like if you're standing down, and you get some distortions in the properties. So, yeah, that's the whole list actually. So to get more acquainted with these letters, I made some models of them, which was a fun project to get away from the computer once in a while. And you get a bit of a feeling, and it's not only for yourself as a study, but if you want to do such a project in a more serious way and you got some funding, it's very good to take that to the people you're talking to and put it on the table and they can feel it, and then it speaks a bit more than just a photograph of some letters. So that was sort of a side effect which was very helpful. Then, in order to get access to the designs that were made by the sculpture, which is already dead since before the Second World War, I requested access to a depot of a museum, and it took about 5 months to get the access, and it's a pretty heavy guarded place. And in there they searched for all the designs they had from this guy, and they put them on display for me so I could study them and look at them, how he made those statues and other works. And what became very clear pretty quickly was that, as you can see here maybe, is that the sides of the characters are not on a 90-degree angle, they're on a bigger angle. So if you have a statue, in order to make it easier to look at, there's sort of a beveled side to it, which doesn't make it easier if you're going to digitize it, because some details are smoothly going from the front surface to the back, and makes the challenge even bigger. But we had very nice designs. This one is from a building in Amsterdam. It's a lobster, and it's about this big. So they pulled out all these gypsum models for me to look at for about 2 or 3 hours. I had the biggest fun with them. They had some sketches. This is also in the same post office, made in tiles about 3 meters high. And some sketches. And those were most interesting to me, as here you could see how he created the characters in his sketches, but also in his statues, and it helped me a lot in the digitization process and the design process, because these statues only had 13 different characters, and for the alphabet you need 26, you know, and then you're still not there if you want to make a font for a wide range of applications. So for some letters, like from an E to an F in this kind of font, it's pretty easy. but some characters you have no idea how to get started. So looking at all these sketches and stuff gave me some ideas on how to construct these missing letters. So, but then you have the idea like, okay, 26 letters, so where do we stop? We can make a sharp S, or we can make a IJ ligature, which is often used in Dutch, and you can make numerals. So I sort of made a long list of about 400 different characters or glyphs which I would like to design. And if you sort of group them together and draw the dependencies, so like for example if you have an E already and you want to go to an F, then it is a pretty easy step. And this is sort of the whole bunch made in one overview. All the black things, let's see, yeah. These are the characters which were on the statues. And if you want to start working with this, then it's like, it's a bit tough. So I sort of grouped this together in a simple text file, and I prioritized my design. So for example, the F could be derived from the E, the I from the T, etc., etc. Sometimes from multiple letters. And of course this is FOSDEM, so you want to see code. I processed the TSV file through Python, and with Graphviz I made some PNG files of prioritized dependencies of glyphs in order for the design of this font. And then it became much more clear in how I would go about designing this font. And also talking to people who were interested in financing this project, this would be more practical if you say, well, if you give us this much amount of money, we can do this work. And maybe if you give a bit more, we can design numerals. And if we have numerals, we don't have only 10 extra glyphs, we have a whole bunch of stuff like superscript, subscript. So we changed this whole forest of glyphs and into 10 different work packages, and we went out to see if we could find funding for this. So, how do you find funding in these times? Anyone? Crowdfunding. So we made a little video about this post office and the statues, and the idea we had, we set a target of 500, 200 euros. We came up with some ideas, some bags which could print it, stamps, books. People could adopt a letter and they could choose a combination. Eventually we raised 5,820 euros and by 105 people, and it created in our city a lot of attention on this post office is going to be designated for the library and some other reusage. So a lot of people were already having a focus on what's going to happen on this building. So we sort of hitchhiked along with that, and well, sort of national online newspapers also wrote an article about it, and from that point we could also start working on co-funding, because with these 5,820 euros we could do part of the 400 glyphs, and if we wanted to do more, we wanted to have more funding, and we also wrote applications to national and local state funding organizations. So this is some impression of the stuff we made. And we had a kick-off event during Bring Your Own Beamer. It's an event in Netherlands and Belgium and also in other countries, I believe. And you can bring your beamer to a specific venue and you can project whatever you want. And what we did is we created an interactive installation where people could experience a concept version of this font. Here's like the concept version, pretty crappy. This is a whole story altogether, but people could go there with a public transport card and have their future predicted by one of these statues, and it will be projected on the wall in between the original statues, and at the same time you get a sticker and you could put it on your clothes with a nice funny prediction of your hypothetical future. And I'm going to speed up a bit. We use of course ZeroMQ to connect some parts of this installation. This is all the other technology we used in that. So finally, after the crowdfunding, we started with the digitization process. And here you see a character, black on black, rough edges. We made a pipeline to make it black and white, and for the colors, little edge detection. And you can do that with this simple line, Image Magic. Then from this, we started in Inkscape designing characters. And after designing a big load of characters, we wanted to import these into FontForge, and not manually, but with a script, of course. And this is the last piece of code for today in this talk. Like the other file we had a new TSV file where we could import the characters, but also construct characters from an A and diaresis to get this one. We could horizontally flip, vertically flip glyphs in order to widen the number of glyphs supported in the final font. So, at the moment we have 173 glyphs designed. Some are alternative forms. We have some with an overshoot. If you use for horizontal typesetting, if you have vertical typesetting, you can disable this. And as of today, the beta version of this font is available on GitHub. The plans are to also design some numerals. These are some of the numerals by the same sculpture. They're not in the same font, so they are going to work as a idea starting points to work on that. So with numerals, not only 0 to 9 we can also do fractions, subscripts, superscripts. And this is sort of the wish list of what we're going to add in February. The open source design tools we used are these usual suspects. And these are the people who made it all possible. And last, I want to show you really quickly how this import process works in FontForge. Who has ever worked with FontForge? Yeah, good. So you do Control dot, you paste in your Python code, you run it. Ta-da. Oh, it's on my screen, sorry. I have to quit the, yeah. So, I didn't know if you see it, was het te zien of niet? Nee? So, just before when I pressed this button, this got all filled up real time. And all the glyphs got imported, flipped or combined in order to make this font exportable to OTF, TTF, etc. That's the thing we did. And there was two people already requested to use it in the cover for their books, and they were pressing me to get it finished by FOSDEM. So I mailed them this afternoon that they can start with it, so it will be used in the next couple of months on some books.
We have 5 minutes for questions.
Yep.
Did you find it to be faster to correct the computer-generated paths from the image recognition than just manually drawing above the photo?
Yeah. So
it's making a line that's not really straight.
Mhm.
It might be harder than just clicking on it to write.
Yeah, we didn't. I will repeat the question. So the question was what the difference between automatically tracing the outlines of the images and drawing by hand. We drew everything by hand and used the images as a background to starting point to see if it sort of matches up. Because as I said, many of the characters differ in size and aspect ratio, and we optimize all the glyphs that we build them up because it's a geometric font, so you just play around with circles and rectangles. So all is unified and minimized, so you have the least amount of nodes in this in order to work with. And I spoke to other people who also did this before, and they said, well, if you find an incomplete font, 100 years old, probably there's so much variation because it needs to fit between the ceiling and the floor, so they mess up the letters all the time. Just start from scratch and don't fix yourself on exact measurements. Yes?
For the lowercase letters, I seem to see that you are using the same forms in a smaller size or exactly the same?
No, it's exactly the same, but these are references. So if we want to do lowercase, then we would fill them, but now they're references so that if people start using it and they're not aware that's only uppercase, then it's like, oh, it doesn't work. So that's why we did it like that. We also got funding from our local government, about 3,000 euros. And my colleague, he went there to defend our application. And he was amazed how well known, for example, Inkscape and open source was at the local government finance department, which was a nice surprise for us. We thought we had to fight a big battle, but apparently from all the years of open source endorsement, it was pretty easy actually. Okay, thank you.